The EU getting to the core of its antitrust suit against Apple with a new, more narrow focus on the tech giant's App Store rules. Some good news for Cupertino, the EU dropping a key part of its case about payments. Here with more, Yahoo Finance's Dan Howley. Hey, Dan.
That's right, Rochelle. This is kind of good news and kind of bad news for Apple. Basically, what they're doing here is, as you said, narrowing the focus of their investigation, mostly now looking at how Apple prevents companies from mentioning to users in the App Store that you can get their apps for cheaper online. So, for instance, say with Twitter Blue, you can get it for a reduced price through the web rather than on the App Store, and that's just because of that 30 to 15% fee that Apple charges app developers. So now the EU is looking at this. It's bad news because it means that people will likely go for the cheaper option, especially when it comes to services they already know, perhaps Spotify, which basically helped kickstart this effort in the EU against Apple. If they already know the service, why not just go there and sign up for a cheaper subscription? The good news for Apple is that it doesn't have to do with some of the other charges that were pending, such as preventing users from downloading apps from third parties, though that could change, or will change rather, in the future.
So then, as you mentioned, some of those charges that the EU dropped against them, why were they dropped?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of this being an easier hit against Apple. It basically, they'll say that if you download an app from a third party, they can't guarantee the security of that. But the Digital Markets Act, which is going into effect in the EU in 2024, which is when it'll actually fully be enforced, means that Apple will have to allow third-party downloads anyway. So what they're going to do is allow third-party app stores outside of the standard app store that you have on your iPhone now. So that means that you'll be able to get apps from other places, not just Apple. Now, you could argue that, well, that's riskier, and sure, it could be, and Apple also will likely make it easier for you to download apps through the App Store than it is for third-party app developers. And, having to download a third-party app means having to download an app, and that adds that kind of friction that consumers don't really like. So it's unlikely to have too large of an impact on Apple's bottom line. So the fact, though, that the Digital Markets Act is going into effect, period, means that a large chunk of the complaint against Apple has already been kind of dealt with. So now it's just whether Apple can tell people, no, you can't advertise your app for cheaper. And really, when it comes down to it, it doesn't seem to be that big of an issue to help consumers in any way by not allowing them to see cheaper prices. So now this is where the EU is pointing. And, we'll see if it works out. Apple says they're going to respond to this, but it's a good news, bad news, not great news kind of situation for Apple, really.
Indeed, especially the narrower scope at least takes some things off the table, at least some of the pressure there, but obviously that scrutiny not going away anytime soon. Dan Howley, thanks so much.